Well, we're on our way up to the Evanston train show in Evanston, Wyoming.
Right. I always love going to Evanston anyway. Lots of memories there.
And it's a great train show.
Oh, absolutely.
For one thing, it's in a roundhouse.
Right.
And the drive up in Echo Canyon is pretty impressive. This is where we got that great shot of the big boy in 2019 on its way to Ogden.
Right. I love the mountain range here, the way it's been carved out by the wind. Isn't that beautiful?
And been coming up this canyon our whole lives.
Oh, yeah.
So it's very familiar. It's like our backyard.
Exactly.
And from a railroad perspective, this was the top of that grade, Evanston, Wyoming. And so Union Pacific built a substantial shop up here to house the various helper engines that had to work between Ogden and the top of the grade here in Evanston.
Right.
And fortunately, the roundhouse has managed to survive, and it's even being meticulously restored. And for the last 25 years, they've had a train show in here. In fact, this was the 25th anniversary of the Evanston train show. It's kind of fun, too, because they don't charge an admission here. If you want to donate money, that's great. They'll certainly accept your donation. But there's no actual charge to come in. So is there no admission?
No admission, just come on in.
What a wonderful thing.
Yeah, that's just, we asked for a donation and...
That we can do.
Well, welcome.
Well, thank you. So the Roundhouse Festival actually started out down at Depot Square. That was the very first thing restored, was the passenger depot and the freight depot and the Joss House.
Right, and the Beam and Cashin building.
Yeah. And then they moved on to the machine shop here.
Right.
And they're still working. I mean, all these years later, and they're still working on the restoration of the shops here.
Right, it's a ponderous undertaking. It's always a pleasure to run into Bob and Karen Gerald. They are part of the N-Scale, Wasatch N-Scalers.
Yeah, there were a couple of just incredible N-Scale railroads here.
Oh, these guys really have it top notch.
And this is over in the Roundhouse, and this was the very first part of the Roundhouse restored, these stalls over here.
They're fun to make.
Oh, you make these?
Yes.
Oh, those are beautiful.
And here's what the Roundhouse looked like 20 years ago.
You know, I always thought it kind of looked a little spooky when I drive past there on, all the broken windows, and I thought it would succumb to a bulldozer.
Well, that's what I assumed. I'd been kicked out of here by the police a few times, but it was just falling down, and with all due respect, no one thought that this thing was salvageable, except for a few people there in Evanston.
Well, thank goodness.
This was always a fun thing to me. There was a little, I think it's a 30-inch gauge, narrow gauge track in here. They just used push carts, but all of the materials from the foundry that went out into the roundhouse exited through these doors on this 30-inch gauge track.
Just a bit peculiar.
But I've always thought that's one of the coolest things, these
Yes.
little narrow gauge railroads inside of a major facility. And then here's the first phases of the restoration, putting a roof on it and then tearing out all the broken windows.
Oh, what a job.
The whole building is glass. It's almost like a big greenhouse, and they spent millions of dollars on the roof. Anyway, for decades now, they've been having events in those parts of the roundhouse that are finished. And at least for us, the big event is the train show.
Right, but they also have weddings and other celebrations here.
Yeah, and look at the progress.
Oh, beautiful.
The
Beautiful.
outside of the building is essentially done. Still some work to do out here. And most of the work now is just finishing up the inside stalls
Right.
of the rest of the roundhouse.
Yeah.
And this part of the roundhouse they've just barely gotten to. They're still doing a lot of work in here. But interestingly, one of the things they're working on in this section of the building is a locomotive.
Yes, this is a good one.
Number 4420.
Yes.
It finished its career here at the Evanston Roundhouse. It had originally worked the shops in Cheyenne, and then it was brought here to Evanston and retired in 1957 and stuck at the courthouse and then in a park. But it's being brought back all the way to operating condition. Every year when we come up here, I'm just stunned at how much work they've gotten done on this.
Right.
At first it's like, I don't know if these guys know what they're getting themselves into trying to restore a steam locomotive.
Right, but oh boy.
But they are getting it right and they are getting it done.
And here's what it looked like when they had it over in the park over by North Elementary in Evanston.
And just walking around this, even back then, it was solid.
Right.
And the important parts were all there and in really good shape. And every time we'd look at it, I thought, this is an engine that could be and should be restored.
Right.
And just a few years ago, they took it to the roundhouse and started doing just that.
That's just awesome.
At first, it just sat outside while they were figuring out how they were going to go about this and raising some money. But it was really neat just to see it back in its location, back at the roundhouse.
Pictures speak 1,000 words, and right here is the entire story of the beginning of the restoration of this locomotive. It's all being done by volunteers and volunteer work.
And they're always looking for more people to help.
Right.
Because it's such an enormous job, and they need to raise money and they need to find help.
Sure.
I think somebody painted it red or something.
Well, it's not red. It was painted red and then white. And that's a dye that will show us where the cracks, if there's any cracks in there.
Did you find any? Wonderful.
Yeah.
We've been following this locomotive for years, coming up and looking at it, and I always said, if ever there was a restorable locomotive,
Yeah.
this is the one. It just sitting there in the park, it
Yeah.
just seemed like it was perfect.
Yeah.
Just
And we've got a roundhouse to do it in.
And they've started diving into what is always the biggest part of restoring a steam locomotive, and that's the boiler work.
Oh, I can imagine.
And they've just now gotten the flues out of the boiler. They've been spending weeks, months really, cutting away all of the tubes out of the boiler, and they were all still sitting here with the torch cuts in them. One of the great challenges in doing this kind of work is you're working inside a boiler where there is no room. These tubes completely fill up the interior space, and you're just trying to work in insanely cramped spaces, cutting away metal tubes to pull the tubes out so that you can actually get inside the boiler to inspect it.
Geez, don't scorch your mustache.
And I fell in love with these fun little carts left over from when it was a roundhouse. Oh, here's the superheater. They started by pulling the superheater out, and as it happens, it's perfect.
Good.
And here are the new tubes, the
Nice.
small ones. They're still looking for a supplier for the larger tubes, but the small ones are here, ready to go back in. This is always the second most exciting part of a locomotive restoration, when you start putting it back together.
Oh, absolutely.
This is fun. This is a Stadler commuter train.
Oh, we just went through the factory not too long ago.
Yeah, it's right there at the Salt Lake Airport. And we mentioned that Ralph Gochner had one of these Stadler modelers, and there it is.
Neat.
That's not Ralph Gochner's. Maybe he got rid of his. Wouldn't surprise me, because he's the only other person I knew that had one. Hi to everybody.
Hi.
Hi. There. This is the short train.
Well, you know, the guy driving the short train drives the short bus.
I really enjoy seeing the modular railroad. It's kind of fun to see what everybody contributes.
And that's really the number one thing at a train show.
Oh, it is.
All the different modular railroads that
Right.
show up. Well, then the dealers.
Absolutely. That's my favorite part.
I'm walking straight at you.
You are. Did you get your calendar yet?
Not yet.
Let's go get it.
And the Rio Grande Historical Society always gives us a calendar.
That's a wonderful thing, isn't it? We can keep track of all of our adventures.
And then the dealers.
Yes.
It's just so fun.
Oh.
I've been thinking of buying this particular set of electronics. I have a plan.
Yes, you do.
But mostly it's just fun to see what you might find in one of the dealer booths.
Right.
Just all kinds of precious, wonderful. It's like treasure hunting.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, another grand adventure in Evanston, Wyoming.
Absolutely.
And again, the drive back down Echo Canyon, always expect to see a train here.
Oh, that line is busy, busy.
Well, if you've never been over to the channel page, please visit the channel page, and while you're there, click on the subscribe button. But there's also a join button there.
Yes.
If you want to financially support the channel, you can become a member. But the number one thing is to click the blue button. Join right there, the subscribe button.
Yes.
Well, we're not sure how you found this video on the internet. We hope you didn't find it boring, and we'll see you here on Tuesday.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.